They took my knife on the third day. I did not fight them for it. You learn, out here on the contested rim, that there are moments to use your strength and moments to save it. 3 Vreth warriors with ionized spears pointed at my chest was not a moment to spend anything, so I let them take the knife. I let them lock the bone resin shackles around my wrists, and I walked, head up, back straight, into the hold of their war skiff. My name is Corporal Dessa Van, 14th Expeditionary, Earth Frontier Corps. I had been separated from my unit during the ambush at Goreth Basin. I was alone, unarmed, and surrounded by 11 beings who averaged 2.5 meters tall. They looked like someone had designed a predator using too many ideas at once. Extra joints in the wrong places, too many teeth, and scales that caught light like wet black stone. I was not afraid. That, I think, should have been their first warning. The Vreth are a warrior civilization in every meaning of that word. Everything in their culture is about rank. Everything carries the weight of old rules and older ceremonies. I had read the briefing files before deployment. I knew that prisoners were not killed immediately. That would be wasteful by their thinking. The Vreth believed in showing their power. They wanted you alive long enough to understand, fully and clearly, how completely you had lost. They brought me before the War Mother on the second day of my capture. Her chamber had been carved into the living hull of the skiff. The walls were black and layered, marked with the names of enemies she had defeated. Hundreds of names, maybe more. She sat on something that was less a throne and more a pile of trophies pressed together into a seat. Old helmets, broken weapons, things sealed in dark jars that I chose not to think about. She was old, very old, by Vreth standards. One of her 4 eyes had gone cloudy and white. Her crest, which I had read turns bright crimson in younger warriors, had faded to a dull rust color. But she moved like something that had never once slowed down. Her name, as our language teams had approximated it, meant something close to matriarch of the unbroken chain. I called her Warmother inside my head, because I needed something short and clear, and I had a feeling I would be thinking about her quite a lot. She looked at me without speaking for a long time. I looked back. She did not like that. The 2 warriors standing beside me shifted their weight. One of them made a low, tight sound, the Vreth version of a warning hiss, but I had not looked away. My first sergeant had told me, years ago, in a pre-deployment talk, don't show them the soft parts. They are like every bully in history. They need to see you flinch before they feel strong. I did not flinch. After a long pause, the War Mother spoke. The translator bead in my ear gave me flat, expressionless English. You are smaller than I expected humans to be. You are taller than I expected, I said, but I have found that tall usually means slower. The room went very quiet. Then the War Mother made a sound that my translator bead decided was a laugh. A real one, not polite or performed. She gestured to a young warrior near the wall, still bright-colored, still eager to prove something, and said 3 short words. The bead gave me, "Return the trophy." Now I need to explain something about my knife. It was not a special knife. It was a standard Earth Frontier Corps combat blade, carbon steel core, polymer composite handle, 17 centimeters long. I had carried it for 6 years. I had used it to open ration packages, to force open a jammed panel on Lyra's station, to cut a splint for Private Chen's broken finger during the retreat from the Kareth corridor. And yes, I had used it for things that a soldier's knife is issued to be used for. The handle had been worn smooth in all the places where my grip always fell. The blade carried a long, thin scratch along the flat side, left by a piece of shrapnel that had knocked it clean off my belt during an engagement and sent it skipping 30 meters across volcanic rock. It smelled, if you knew what you were smelling, of human skin oil, human sweat, and a preservative polymer compound that the EFC had been applying to all field equipment since what the supply division called the Murith incident. The compound was a bonding agent designed to stop alien biological material from degrading our gear in the field. As it turned out, the Vreth had very particular chemistry in their skin. As it also turned out, no one on either side had known this until approximately the next few seconds. The young warrior, I decided to call him the champion, because of how he walked, came forward holding my knife point down. A deliberate choice of position. It meant, I am returning this because you are not important enough for us to bother keeping it. He had clearly rehearsed the walk. It was theatrical. His chin was up, his stride was long, and every movement said, "Look at how little I think of you." He was 3 paces from me when he wrapped his main hand around the handle. He made it 2 more paces before the sound began. I have tried to find the right word for that sound many times since. It was not quite a scream, because Vreth do not scream the way humans do. It was higher and more broken than that. It bypassed words entirely and went straight into the part of the brain that knows, without needing to think, that something is deeply wrong. His hand had closed on the polymer grip, and something in his skin had met something in the preservative compound, and the result was immediate and severe and completely unambiguous. He dropped the knife. He stared at his hand. His hand was blistering, not from heat. There was no fire, no flame. But the skin was rising in large, fast welts. The dark scales were splitting and peeling back from the edges, and he was making that sound, that broken, not quite scream, while backing away in a series of stumbling, uneven steps that had nothing in common with the smooth and practiced stride he had arrived with. I watched it happen and kept my face still. The champion hit one of the flank warriors as he backed away. Both of them stared at his hand. The flank warrior took one look, made a shorter and sharper version of the same sound, and left. He simply turned and walked quickly out of the chamber. A trained professional soldier of an empire that had held this region of space for 2 centuries, Vertumituris just abandoned his post because of what he saw on his comrade's hand. The champion followed him, still holding the injured hand up, still making that sound. 2 more warriors went after them, not because anyone ordered it, because the sight of what had happened to the champion apparently reached something very old and very cautious inside them, something that decided without asking the rest of their brain that this place was no longer safe. Within half a minute, there were 4 fewer Vreth soldiers in the War Mother's chamber. The remaining 7 had not left. They were still armed, but they had moved. Without any order being spoken, they had rearranged themselves into a shape that put as much space as possible between their bodies and the knife, which was now lying on the floor, looking like what it was, a battered, scratched, unremarkable piece of field equipment. The War Mother had not moved at all. She was looking at the knife. Then she was looking at me. Then the knife again. I looked at it too. "That belongs to me," I said. The silence that followed had weight to it. It was not the silence of a room where nothing was happening. It was the silence of a room where too much was happening inside one person's mind, and none of it had resolved yet. I had read about this in the briefing files. The Vreth processed unexpected battlefield information through what their researchers called the moment of reweighing. It was a genuine pause, not a performance. A Vreth commander would stop, set aside everything she thought she knew about an opponent, and look again from the beginning. Their scholars considered it a mark of high intelligence. A commander who skipped this step was a commander who died surprised. The War Mother was reweighing me. I stood there, still chained, still unarmed, still in my dusty field uniform with dried blood on the left sleeve that was not all mine, and let her do it. My wrists hurt where the bone resin had tightened. I had a headache from not drinking enough water. I had slept maybe 4 hours in the past 2 days. I was tired and sore and completely calm. That is the part about humans that never comes through clearly in intelligence reports, written by species who did not grow up the way we grew up. We are not calm because nothing threatens us. We are calm because we have been frightened for so long, by so many things, across so many hundreds of thousands of years of surviving on a planet that tried to end us at nearly every stage, that we learned, somewhere deep in the structure of what we are, to set the fear to the side. To shelve it, to look at the thing that wants to break us and simply wait for the moment when waiting becomes something else. The Vreth came from a world where they were the most dangerous thing. They rose to power without serious competition. They had never had to learn what it feels like to be prey, and still choose to move forward anyway. We had learned nothing else. The War Mother spoke. 4 words. The bead gave me, "What are you made of?" It was not a threat. It was not a performance. It was a real question, asked in the careful, neutral tone of someone whose model of the world has just produced a result it cannot explain. I looked at my knife on the floor. I looked at her. "The same thing every human is made of," I said. "Mostly iron. A fair amount of stubbornness." A long history of bad decisions that somehow worked out. She was quiet again, long enough that one of the remaining warriors shifted slightly. "Your weapon harmed my warrior," she said, "and you did not use it." "My weapon has 6 years of me on it," I said. "That turns out to matter." She considered that for a moment. Then she had them take the shackles off. "Not release me. I want to be precise about this. I was still a prisoner. I was still deep inside Vreth-controlled space, on a ship surrounded by her forces. My situation had not changed in any tactical sense, but she had the shackles removed, and she had the knife returned to me using a cloth held at arm's length, which was apparently the correct method, since the reaction needed direct skin contact to occur. She offered me water. I took it. She offered food. I accepted that too, because refusing it would have been foolish, and I was hungry. And then she talked to me. For hours. She wanted to know about humans, not our weapons technology, not our fleet numbers, not our logistics chains. Her intelligence teams handled those things. She wanted to know what we were. She told me she had 3 other human prisoners aboard the skiff, and that all of them had behaved in ways she did not know how to fit into her understanding of how captured enemies were supposed to behave. "None of you beg," she said. "It rarely changes anything," I said. "None of you go quiet inside. I have seen it in many species. The moment when a prisoner accepts that they are finished. You do not have that moment." "We have it," I said. "We are actually very good at despair. We have spent most of our history being desperate about something. We just also became very good at standing up again after." She looked at me with her 3 clear eyes. The clouded one pointed at nothing, fixed somewhere to my left. "My champion's hand will heal," she said. "I am glad," I said, and I meant it. I had no wish for him to be permanently hurt. I had not planned any of it. "I know you did not plan it," she said. "That is the part that concerns me most." She was a smart commander. She understood immediately that an accidental advantage was in some ways more dangerous than a deliberate one, because it meant there were other advantages we had not discovered yet either. Things about us that we did not know were dangerous until they turned out to be. She was not wrong. I was exchanged for 2 Vreth scouts 3 weeks later, as part of a prisoner agreement that my unit had been working on the entire time I was in captivity. I walked back across the neutral line at Goreth Basin, with my knife on my belt and my head level, and my commanding officer grabbed me by both shoulders the moment I crossed the marker and said, "Van, I need you to explain what happened on that ship," because the Vreth diplomatic representative had made specific mention of the incident in their early communications. I told him the full story, from the beginning. He stared at me. "Your knife." "My knife." "The polymer coating, combined with their skin chemistry, yes, it's documented. Section 14 of the EFC Environmental Exposure Reports covers contact sensitivity in Vreth biological material when—" "I have read Section 14, he said, in the voice of a man who had clearly not read Section 14. I did not argue the point. In the official debrief that followed, I learned several things. The first was that the War Mother had issued a standing order after my departure. All EFC prisoners were to be stripped of equipment at double the standard distance, using handling tools rather than direct contact. A formal assessment had been commissioned to determine whether other human biological material, sweat residue, skin oils, cellular matter left on surfaces, posed any similar hazard to Vreth personnel. The assessment concluded that they did not, in any reliable or repeatable way. But the Vreth did not know that yet when the order was issued. And humans, being humans, found out about the order within roughly 6 weeks. Signals intelligence, a captured communication, a loose word in a neutral port. I was never told exactly how. But the information moved, the way useful information always moves among people who need an edge. And humans, being human, immediately began thinking about what to do with it. I will not give specific details. Classification levels are what they are, and some things are not mine to share. What I can say is that the following 3 engagements in the Goreth Basin region went considerably better for our side than the previous 7 had. I can say that Vreth frontline commanders began requesting reassignment away from sectors with high human contact. I can say that the phrase, "do not touch what the humans have touched," entered the regular vocabulary of Vreth field units, according to the intelligence division, and spread from there into general soldier talk. Not because everything we touched was actually dangerous, but because they could not be certain it was not. There is a principle in conflict, older than space travel and older than written language, that says, the threat you cannot measure is more frightening than the one you can. A known danger has edges. You can plan around it, prepare for it, calculate the cost. An unknown danger has no edges. It could be anywhere. It could be anything. It fills up all the space that knowledge has not yet claimed. The Vreth were a species that had dominated through certainty. They knew their strength, and they used it, and their enemies knew it too, and that knowledge was itself a weapon. They had never faced an opponent that generated uncertainty simply by existing. They had never had to wonder whether the ordinary, unremarkable objects in an enemy's possession might be hazardous in ways no one had mapped yet. We had given them that experience without trying to, and once given, it could not be taken back. The War Mother sent one communication to the EFC negotiating team in the weeks after my release. It was short. The translation read, "Your soldier looked at me without flinching. I want to understand why." My commanding officer forwarded it to me with a single line of his own. "Van, any thoughts?" I wrote back, "Tell her it's because looking away first costs you something you don't get back. Tell her we learned that a long time ago, on a planet that was much harder than this." I do not know if that answer was satisfying to her. I think it might have been the first honest thing either side said to the other. There is a version of this story where I become something larger than I am, where the knife becomes a symbol, and my time on the skiff becomes a turning point in the war, and my name gets attached to something important. That version is cleaner. It is also wrong. What actually happened is smaller and more real than that. One soldier lost her knife and got it back. One old commander looked at something she did not expect, and was honest enough to ask about it, instead of pretending she understood. A young warrior's hand healed, and he carried a memory in that hand that made him more careful than he had been before. And somewhere in the wide space between two civilizations trying to decide whether to keep fighting each other, a tiny piece of doubt got planted in the mind of a people who had not felt doubt in a very long time. I still have the knife. The handle is worn in the same places it always was. The blade still carries that long scratch from the rock field outside Lyris Station. It does not look like something that once cleared a room. It does not look like something that made a veteran Vreth commander pause and ask a real question. It looks like what it is, a tool carried a long way by someone who was not planning to stop. I clean it regularly now, properly, with the right cloth, working from the spine to the edge the way my first sergeant showed me years ago, in a training yard that smelled like machine oil and dry grass. But sometimes I forget. Old habits are like that. They stay in your hands long after your mind has moved on to other things. And maybe that is the truest version of this story. Not the strategy, not the biochemistry, not the moment in the War Mother's chamber when 4 soldiers left their posts. Just a person who kept carrying the same knife for 6 years, the same way, every day, without thinking much about it. And what that turned out to mean, when it finally mattered.